Good evening. Buenas noches. Bonjour. Konbanwa. Sawadi Pinong. Dong Yen. Welcome to our presentation of this Facebook Live of making gifting great again. Sorry we don't have the red hats, but we're going to try without it. Our purpose tonight is to help some of you take advantage of the recent changes in the tax laws and maybe clarify some of the issues you may have with gifting through a will, through your estate, or otherwise. And tonight what we're going to do is we're going to have a panel and we'll have a back and forth discussing the various techniques that we've found successful over the years. Before we get started, a little disclaimer. The information that we're giving today is general in nature. While some of the examples may fit you to a T, they don't. Every person is different. So we would suggest that you take the information from here, do your own research, or contact a lawyer or a financial expert on this. So, having said that, everybody understands that this is general in nature and not specific. Is that a good disclaimer, Sal? Is that good? Okay. The lawyer said okay. All right, so let's go to the panel. On the left side is Sal Perillo. He's a lawyer. He is our lawyer tonight. And he's a member of Transfiguration. And Sal and I have been in business for a long time. And it was said earlier tonight that Sal and I were at Mount Sinai with Moses. And one of the interesting parts of that story is that the Israelites were really upset because Moses didn't come down for a while. And so when Sal finally came down with Moses, I said, what took so long? Sal was the head of the negotiation. And he says, I got him to back off to 20%. They're keeping the tithe at 10%. And I said, well, what did you have to give up? He says, bearing false witness. So that's still in there. He's a lawyer. Okay, no more Moses jokes. All right, next to Sal is Diane Moraine. She's a CPA, Certified Public Accountant, also a member here at Transfiguration. And her areas of expertise are in tax planning and small businesses, which really is where we need to focus in when we talk about the Tax Control and Jobs Acts of 2017 that President Trump signed into law. And last but not least is Lexi Gregory. She is my partner, business associate, my right-hand man, or my right-hand human, the go-to guy, the person that makes the trains run on time, and the person that's supposed to keep me out of trouble. And Lexi will be addressing some of the mechanics, how we would implement some of these strategies, or how you do the paperwork, which is a big thing. So, without further ado, let's go to the panel. Sal, in our bulletin, sometimes we see an ad say, remember your parish in the will, or a trust, or there's something where people are talking about wills and trusts. Like most people, you know, it's kind of cumbersome. So why don't we just start out, tell us a little bit what's a will and what's a trust, and generally how we use those for gifting or passing stuff.
Thank you, Terry, for asking me to be here. I really appreciate it. I'm going to start out with the wills. A will is a document that we all put together that put out our last wishes before we pass on. The will is going to consist of what we want to leave our assets to, our family, if you have children, who they're going to go to, and how they're going to be protected, where are we going to be buried when we pass on, and so on. A will is probated. And by probating a will, what you have to do is notify your siblings, and they get letters to the cemetery. Those letters are then mailed back, the judge approves them, and then once they're back, we send a letter out to the newspaper, wait 4 weeks, and basically once that's done, the will is probated. It takes anywhere probably from 5 weeks, it could be 6 months, depending how many siblings you have in the family. That's the issue. A will is made public. When you file it, that means that while you're waiting for it to be probated, relatives go in and read it and see what it says, If there's any problems that they want to contest it, they can do that. But they can also do that with the letter of testamentary, because they're notified. It's a simple document, very easy to put together. You just need to put a lot of thought behind it, and it's something that you need to give a lot of thought to. The other issue is a thing called the revocable or irrevocable trust. A revocable trust is something you put together, and what that means basically is that you get all your assets at one time and put them into this revocable trust, okay? And once they're in that trust, they're protected, and some of the upsides are is that when you do pass on, no one reads it, because a revocable trust isn't read. It's not like a will where it's public, okay? But a trust is also expensive. Put one together, somewhere between $1,200 and $3,000 on the simpler ones, okay? It could be a lot more depending on your assets. And as Terry said earlier, the more assets you have that you want to protect and put into this trust, it could be expensive to put it all together. Another thing, when you set up a trust, your assets are put into that trust. You become the grantor and the grantee. As the grantor, you will grant the assets to that trust to you, the grantee, you and your wife or whomever you want, with a third person that's to look over your trust once you pass on. It's a good document, and there's some upswings. You can avoid tax issues with a trust. But with a will, you have to understand that the tax laws, you'll pay a tax, but I think Georgia has no longer has an inherited tax, okay? And I believe the federal government takes 40% of the first, after the first $5.6 million.
Actually, it's up to 11 million. It's up to 11 million.
11 million now, but thank you.
For most people, but.
Yeah, but again, I mean, that's why a will, it's a simple way to do things. It's cheaper, and if you can do a will, I mean, that's one of the things you should be really thinking about. But again, as Terry said, your assets more or less tell you exactly how you're going to do these things.
Thank you. And we'll just move over to Diane. And as I mentioned, the Tax Control and Job Acts of 2017 changed how we make tax-deductible donations to charities. In this case, we're talking about Transfiguration. So just give us a quick overview.
Yeah, it was really very significant. They basically doubled the standard deduction. So for married people it was $12,000, now it's $24,000. You know, it used to be if you owned a home and you were paying property taxes, then you had income taxes, you would always itemize, and that was just the way it was. Now it's really become more difficult. The act will definitely help people who have just been taking the standard deduction. That will be a real benefit for them. For people kind of in the middle, you just have to check both ways. And one of the other more interesting aspects is also that the way you prepare your federal is the way you have to do your state, and so you have to kind of check, well, what's going on with the state return. You might, if you're close to itemizing on your federal, you still might have to check your state. It might be better to take itemized deductions, which are less than the standard deduction. So there's a lot of different kinds of things, and while the doubling of the standard deduction, everybody was like, oh, that's wonderful news, they kind of left out the fact that they took away personal exemptions. So for some people who maybe were taking itemized deductions were $20,000 to $24,000 in that range, and then they were also getting, you know, over $4,000 for each exemption, that might be another $16,000 to $20,000 deduction that they're no longer getting. So there's some different things going on. There's a brand new small business, qualified business deduction for any pass-through entities, sole proprietorship, S corporation, partnership, which is something that they've never done before. So there's a whole new deduction. One of the really great things for young families with children is they used to have a $1,000 tax credit. Now it's $2,000 tax credit, and more importantly, they raised the limit. The income limit before was so low that a lot of people still couldn't take the deduction. Where now it's over $400,000. So it's like, you're under that amount, you can get $2,000 for each of your children. So that's a big benefit. So there are a lot of different things going along, and different kind of ways to look at things. But that's what, you know, in the raising the standard deduction made your charitable donations. You know, I've had people say, oh, so charitable donations aren't deductible anymore. Well, no, it all depends. Everybody's different, and there are different ways to kind of look at things. And you know, and like you said, everybody's, it's much more personalized, I think, now than before. It's like, oh, if you own a house, you're gonna itemize, and that's what you do, and now you have to kind of look at different things, because there's also a limit on, taxes, state and local taxes, your property taxes, there's a limit on that, and, which really, you know, for people in Georgia, we're fortunate with our property taxes. Many of us have friends and families maybe in the Northeast or California or something like that, and they're getting hit hugely with this act, because, I mean, limiting $10,000, anybody who's lived up north knows that that's nothing. That's a quarterly payment, you know, so.
All right.
Yeah.
Now, it was said that had Diane been with Sal and I on the mountain, she would have been able to write off 40 years of the travel expenses to the Israelites and wiped out everything. She wasn't there. All right, Lexi, Sal was talking about the wills and the trust, where a will is probated. That means that's how a judge or the court decide how your stuff goes to whoever. And then a trust, like we use, keeps going. What other ways can we pass stuff other than going through, you know, probate or trust?
There's two other ways that we go about doing it, and for qualified accounts such as IRAs or 401ks and also annuities, that you can designate it as a beneficiary. So for instance, you could have your spouse as a beneficiary. You could list the organization as a contingent beneficiary along with your children, and you just break it up in whatever percentage you would like to. And then also we do TODs or PODs, depending on what state you're in, transfer on death or payable on death. And that way, once something happens to you, it is transferred to the organization in whatever percentage that you want it to be transferred in, or also your children or spouse.
All right. A primary would be what? A primary.
Oh, primary is the person who gets it first.
Okay, and then the contingent would be the kids.
Yeah.
And your financial planner.
Sure.
Okay. All right. So let's say, do some examples. Let's say, you know, one of the things with Transfiguration we're known for is the music. I mean, everybody comes here, so it's the music. And also our flower arrangements, the people that keep everything green around here are the greenies. So if I'm just most of my wealth would be, let's say, in my house, and, you know, I'm on a limited income, but I'm volunteering here. But at my passing, I would like to, maybe, I don't know, I really like the gardens outside the entrance, and I want to make sure that keeps going. Now, how would I leave money, even though I don't have any money, you know, on income, but maybe through insurance or the sale of my house, maybe keep some of that garden going for forever or whenever. You know.
You would specify it in the will. Basically, in your will, you'll say, I want to leave $1,000, $2,000 to the Holy Name Society, or I want to leave $5,000 for the upkeep of the flower of the church, and you would leave that money to the church and let them. The easiest way is to do it that way and let them make the decision how it's going to be distributed. I mean, that's my opinion. It makes things a lot easier and a lot cleaner. Now, if you have assets and say you have a house and car and what have you, you want to sell that, with the money you get from that, you want to put it into a donation to the church. Again, you would just specify, I hereby leaving so much to the Transfiguration Flower Society. I'll leave another $5,000 or $6,000 to the Holy Name Society to be given out yearly in a scholarship to be designated by the Holy Name Society. But again, it would be easy to let them do it. Okay, that's the way I would recommend to do it. Again, if you have bigger assets, the trust, I keep hampering on bigger assets. If you have a lot of money and you want to put it in trust perpetually and have someone manage it, then probably a trust would be the way to go. And you would set that up the way I explained earlier, with a grantor, grantee, and so on.
Right. Because most of us don't have a lot of assets, but we have income. You know, retired people, Social Security, blah, blah, blah. And we may have, like our house or property about 35 years ago in LJ, we thought we were going to retire on that we're not retiring on. So at our passing, a percent $5,000 is in the will. And if it's a lot more, maybe use a trust.
Yeah, again, you have to set the trust up, you have to designate the assets, to put the trust in place, you have to put assets in that trust immediately, okay? And this is called a revocable living trust. So you have to have assets to start the trust up. And that's why, you know, it works, I mean, a lot of people use the trust. But again, to keep it clean and simple, and it's not a lot of money, then my recommendation is to put in your will and designate that so much money will go to the society and be distributed in like a manner of $1,000 a year or $500 a year, something like that.
And somebody would be in charge of that too.
No, who would be in charge of it? Say it's the Holy Name Society. You would leave it to the Holy Name Society of the church. Somebody in the Holy Name Society, president or what have you, the designated person would take care of that at that point in time. Same thing with the church. If you leave the money to the church, it would be a lump sum to be distributed at the discretion of the church.
Okay. All right. So we can pass stuff and get it to where we want it.
Absolutely.
We will.
Absolutely.
Okay.
And again, as I said, I'm trying to keep things simple. I'm telling you that trust is important and a will is important. They're both important documents, but you have to think about what's easier for you and what's the simplest way to do this without costing you a lot of money.
Now, one of the things, not here tonight, was an associate of Sal's, Andrew Woods, was supposed to be here. But late last week, he got called in for an urgent or emergency back surgery. How's Andrew doing?
Pretty good. I talked to him today. He's got to stay off his feet another week, but he's doing much better. So.
Microphone.
He's doing much better.
It's not just decoration. It's not holding down my boa.
Terry?
All right. Yes.
We have a question from our Facebook audience.
Yes.
It is, can you speak more in depth about the impact of the new tax law on charitable donations?
Funny you should mention that. Diane, you mentioned the TCJA, as we call it, the Tax Control and Job Act of 2017. What are some of the ways that we can take advantage of the new tax law? You know, it's just like, we'll start with bundling, if you will.
Right, so bundling, you know, you've heard bundling. There's kind of a couple different ways. It's really kind of putting your donations into a calendar year that then they become deductible. And so then other years you take the standard deduction. So you can do that several different ways. You can, you know, if you just, you know, you're close to that 24 mark or something, or 12,000 if you're single. You know, if you want to say, okay, you know, I usually maybe make a lot of donations at the end of the year, but you know, I'm going to move that into January of this year, so I'll do January and December and kind of use that money. You could obviously just, you know, say, you know what, I'm going to give the church, you know, $25,000 this year, but I'm not going to give anything for the next 5 years. There are also donor advised funds, which is through a financial planner, where you would give them, again, kind of a large sum of money that you could deduct that year, maybe include it with other, let's say it's the last year that you're going to be paying higher property taxes or something like that. That might be a good year to include that all together, and then the donor advised funds, the person under your direction would distribute those to, you know, various organizations that you want the money to go to. But it's just kind of, you know, kind of looking at that planning, kind of long term, you know, what are my projections, and it just takes some time to think about those things. And but there are there are financial advisors who will help with that money, you know, to hold on to that money. You can make the donation, and then that will be fully tax deductible in the year that you make it. And then they could, if you want to split out the money over a period of time, they could make those donations on your behalf.
So you give it up front, take the donation, and then the advisor, if it's an advisor fund, they just every year,
right,
whatever.
Right, you would you know, say we want this to here and that to there, and whoever, you know, they would all have to be charitable organizations, church or charitable.
Right, and if we have time later in the program, we have another guest that's here. It's from the Catholic Foundation of North Georgia, and they have donor advisor fund, and they handle a lot of the donations in the Atlanta area. I mean, big time, and they're a good organization. But if we have time, we'll bring them up later. All right, let's talk about QCDs. That's why everybody's here.
Yeah. Qualified charitable distributions is really a wonderful thing. It's basically you're taking a certain amount of retirement money. The important thing is, even though it's not just retirement money, you have to be 70 and a half. So it kind of falls with the RMD, with your required minimum distribution. The distribution to a charity, it goes directly from your financial advisor to the charity. It does not go through you. That would be bad. Then it doesn't count. So that reduces your taxable income, which is, of course, always a good thing. So you have to do that, 70, and it can qualify for your RMD. So if each year, at the end of each year, what your RMD is for the next year, and so you have some time to do some planning. And you can set that up, so if you want it to be a monthly payment to the church or something, or someplace, you could set up for monthly, if that's what you choose. You could set it for once a year. You can set up monthly, and it will continue until you stop. If you say, so that it's a great way. It reduces, you don't pay tax on that money. Which, and when you reduce that taxable income, it might reduce the amount of Social Security that you're being taxed on. If you're, highly invested, the additional Medicare that sometimes people have to pay, there are other things that it will help reduce in just your straight income tax, particularly when it's linked with Social Security. Because I think everybody gets a little annoyed when, you're like, oh, I can't believe we're getting taxed on Social Security. It's a large issue for a lot of people that it's frustrating. So if you can reduce your taxable income from retirement funds, because once you hit that RMD, it doesn't matter if you need the money or not, you have to take it out. And so this is a way to take that money and put it someplace else, and then you don't have to pay tax on it. So it's really, if you plan ahead, if you know what your contributions are going to be in any given year, just go ahead and set that up. And I think Lexi could probably tell you exactly what you have to do. It's not something you do yourself, so there is one more step. You just can't say, oh, I'm going to take my money and then do it. It has to come from your financial company. And also you will notice that I've had a couple people who are doing this, and it's a little frustrating for them because when you get your letter from your church that says, how much money you've given, it's going to say 0. And I think for some people that hits them a little bit, because what they're saying is that this is coming from retirement money, so then you can't also deduct it as an itemized deduction. Mm-hmm. So that's why it comes, but for a lot of people, they open up that envelope the first time, they're like, well, wait a minute, I was giving $500 a month, and why is it saying nothing? Did the church not get the money? And people have called and make sure, but that's why that letter comes out, and sometimes it's a little unnerving to people.
All right, so the RMD, that was in the 80s when they came out, or whenever it was, they came out and said that these retirement accounts are getting too big,
right,
and we're not taxing them.
Right.
So we're going to make you take money out so we can tax you.
Yeah.
And that's because
get their money up
because
front.
what would happen is people would die and they leave it to their spouse,
and then they would leave it
to the children, and the government wasn't getting their money.
Because Roth IRAs are not tax deferred, so Roth IRAs do not have an RMD.
Right.
You never,
correct.
because then you're not going to pay tax on it. They don't care what you do with the money.
Okay, so Lexi, so if somebody wants to, they have to take out X amount of dollars a year, whatever it is, and they're already giving money to the church on a monthly, weekly, annual basis. They're giving that money, but they have to take RMD. How would someone go about, instead of giving the church $1,200 a year, like they give $100 a month, and let's say their RMD's $15,000 a year. So how would, let's say I was that old, and how would I get that $1,200 that I'm giving to the church already and not pay tax on it?
You would contact the custodian, and you would fill out the form, whatever custodian, and you write the church's name. The check has to be mailed to you, and then you will turn it in to the church, and then the church will give you the
So the check will come to Terry Dunn?
no, it will come to you, but it will be made out to the church.
Yeah, make those checks out to Terry Dunn.
I guess it depends on the custodian.
Right.
Because
Right, we have both work.
Yeah.
They'll send it to the client, and then the client will take it to the charity, then the charity will give them a letter. Mm-hmm. And the letter, if you get the letter from the charity, keep the letter. You know, I say, well, I don't, keep the letter, because if you're audited, that says that your donation was to a qualified charitable organization, a 503c1. Okay, so how much can I give?
There's no limit, as much as you want.
I thought there was 100,000.
Oh,
I mean,
well,
well,
okay.
yeah.
There was a different
Well, you
room,
got
I
some-
guess.
yeah. So,
I was trying to read my audience.
yeah, analyze your audience. So if you have a 401k and whatever, a bunch of IRAs, and you have over $100,000, you can do a QCD for up to $100,000. And your wife also, or your husband, if they also have their own IRA with $100,000. That's the cap. I don't know, that's a different room. All right, so now Lexi, we had a client in our branch, very prominent Georgian, and he gave 6 or 7 QCDs. So he had different organizations, his church, his alumni, whatever. And so, what do they have to do?
Same thing, contact the custodian, and then you'll fill out the form. You'll fill out 7 different forms, and you state who it's going to, and be mailed to you, and you will disperse it among the organization.
Right. And so Diane, you mentioned if somebody's already given $100, so if I put $100 in the envelope every month, and at the end of the year, I'm over 70 and a half, I write off $1,200?
You can write it off as an itemized deduction, but it's not a qualified distribution because it has to come from the custodian.
That's key.
Yeah, you have to do it ahead of time. It's not, you can't do it afterwards.
Right, and you have to be
70 and a half.
I got a
3 days?
No, I got a Facebook question from Fred W. Dear Terry, I'm retiring this year. My birthday is the end of June. When I'll turn 70. How do I do this? So, Fred W. will turn 70 and a half the 29th, let's say it's the 29th or 28th of June. How am I going to get my QCD in time if I turn 70 and a half, and I have to be 70 and a half, I can't be 75 months and 27 days, I have to be 70 and a half. How am I going to get a QCD for 2019?
You have to work really quick with the paperwork.
Right.
That's, you know, it
That's
has
why-
to be, the paperwork has to be done.
Right. And you work with your financial professional.
And that's, I think, one of the, you know what your RMD is before the whole year. So it's not a surprise. You know, so you don't find out that at the end of the year, you find it out the year before. And it's based on the value of your accounts and percentages and numbers pulled out of the sky. But you know what that number is. So you can work with it, you know what your lifestyle is and where other money and things like that are coming from. So so you do have time to plan, and I guess you can do monthly or annual or...
We've only done annual.
Yeah, okay.
But,
yeah, because I have someone who does it's monthly. That's what they wanted to
Yeah,
go to their
right.
church, and
That's
so
right. Well, let's just make an example. Or take an example. This young man right here. How old are you, young man?
Talk to me.
Talking to you. How old are you?
Over 7 and a half.
No, this year, how old are you?
7'6".
This year?
Yeah. 7'7" this year.
Okay, the questions are going to get a little harder as we go. Okay, so you're going to be 77. So now they have a thing on, I think it's the third, on your desk, there's little layouts. I think it's the IRS Table 3, the lifetime credit. And for age 77, I'm thinking of a number. 22, what? 21.2 is the number, the great Karnak. All right, so your distribution is 21.2. So what you would do on December 31st, 2018, you tally up all your IRAs, 401ks, IRA annuities, whatever you have. So let's say you have a IRA and you got $150,000 in it on December 31st. You took some of your 401k, and this is a rollover, and you took some of your 401k and bought an annuity for guaranteed income. And so let's say you got $250,000 in your annuity, and you've got an IRA when you were working because you were a consultant when you got laid off, and you got, I don't know, $24,212 or whatever, okay? So this is on December 31st. So you take this and you add it all up. And this is your account value on December 31st, okay? So your RMD is based on your December 31st total of all your IRAs, 401ks, SEP IRAs that you're not participating in, everything. Okay, so first off, we're going to say a little prayer for the intercession of Sister Mary Coleman to get me through this next act. All right, this is your divisor, and this is your dividend. And your quotient is your RMD. Okay? So, as Sister Mary Coleman always said, move your decimal one to the right. So you move your decimal one to the right and you take it up. Okay? So 212 doesn't go into 4, doesn't go into 42, but it does go into 422. How many times? 2. Good. Okay, 420, 0. Drop the 2, 0. Drop the 1, 0. Drop the 2. Oh, what a coincidence. It goes in 1 time. Drop the 0, goes in 0 times, and then 0, 0, 0. So your RMD for 2018 is $20,010. No matter what this number was, I would have doubled it and put that number there. All right, so your RMD would be 20,000. Okay, so of this 20,000, $10. Does anybody want to check my long division? Okay, so you got, that's your RMD. And so you give your church, let's say, 3,000, St. Vinny's, 1,000. Molly and I are big, or for a long time have been given to the marital fathers. You know, they say you get 1,000 for that, and blah, 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 blah. And you end up here with $5,000. And this will answer Fred W.'s question. Well, he knows that on December 28th, he has to take out $5,000 for his RMD. But he doesn't have to wait to take the $15,010. He can take that any time during the year. It's this, once he turns 70 and a half, at the end of December, that's going to be the wrinkle, getting that money into the QCD. So people born in June, the latter half of June, it's rough to get the, my birthday's in October, so I got, I turned 70 and a half in April, or, somewhere around there. And so that would be a problem for me. But the people, the last half of June, it's a rush trying to get your QCDs in.
Can you do the paperwork ahead of time and then just wait to sign? Is that something that is
Well,
an option?
not that FINRA will let you predate forms or sign forms like that, but
Just said
there's
prepare the forms.
there's probably some unscrupulous planners. Which I wouldn't know anything about that. Okay. So Sal, can I leave stuff to a fund, like in my will, to a donor fund like Diane was talking about? An advisor donor fund?
Yes.
And so,
Yes.
so if I was worried about the Green Committee chairman, I could do fund, and like, the Catholic Foundation of North Georgia, I can leave the money to them for the purpose of the greenies.
Yes,
And then they would, you know, on an annual basis.
they would distribute it, that's correct.
I'll sing while we're waiting for that. Or maybe I won't. All right, another area, in this area particularly, we have a lot of people that work for Coca-Cola, IBM, the Bells, and they have these stocks in their company they bought, and you know, they're worth hundreds of dollars now, but their cost basis, when they figure out their stock splits it out, they're worth, their cost basis is $2 or $3. And so if they sell them, let's say for $200, they have a $197 capital gain. Now you can wait till you die and pass it on to someone and let them have the benefit of your investment, or you can do what they call a highly appreciated stock gift. And how would that work?
And that's, it's very similar that you would have the stock transfer to the charity, and they would get the full value of what you've, you know, the investment over the time, and also you would get to write off that as a donation, the fair market value. So it's really kind of a win-win, you know, situation, and it's a great way. It costs you, I mean, costs you the value of the item, but it doesn't cost you anything in taxes, rather than, you know, turning it into cash and then giving the money. You're better off to just give the stock, the appreciated stock.
Okay.
And that would be through a broker, through, yeah.
So, Victor, now, if we wanted to give to Transfiguration, we'd go through the Archdiocese or go through the foundation here? I mean, that's not something you would handle, would it?
No, the stock donation can go to the Archdiocese, but you can also go through the foundation.
All right, so how about this?
And when I say go through the Archdiocese, because they receive the stock, they sell it, and then they send the money over to us.
Correct. All right, so how about this QCD? How does that work if we have a check made out to the Catholic Church? You know, or the Church of the Catholic Church of the Transfiguration. That's who the check's made out to?
Correct.
So what do we do with it? Put it in the basket?
No, for QCD, so the broker, the finance, they would send the check to us, and we would receive that. What we actually do is we keep it in our records that, yes, this came from you, but it's not tax deductible, but we would send you a letter saying, yes, we received this from your IRA directly, and so you can keep that protected.
And that's the letter that would prove, or if you were audited, that your donation was a legitimate 5036.
Correct.
All right, Lexi, we were talking about the beneficiaries. Once you make somebody your beneficiary, let's say you set up your 401k when you first started and it was for your wife and the kids, can you go back and change that kind of stuff?
Yes, at any time you can go back and change it.
And who would you do that? Just call them or what?
Custodian, fill out a form and change it.
Okay. And Sal, when we did our wills, and a lot of people do their wills, it takes them forever, especially when you got kids. You know, like, who's going to take care of the kids? I'm not leaving your brother in charge of my. You remember you wore that lampshade at our wedding rehearsal? There's no way. Whatever. So you go through a lot of consternation to do a will, and people don't want to go through that again. So maybe I forgot to put Transfiguration in my will. I don't want to go over it and do it again. I mean, you got to pick the executor. You have to go. You have to start over, or what?
No, basically, it depends on what changes you want to make. Sometimes the changes are a lot, and we'll recommend to redo the will. But for the most part, if you just want to change someone who get a donation or something like that, or the kids are now grown up, they're out of the house, and you want to might stop whatever you're going to do for the kids, basically put a codicil to the will. And a codicil is done the same way as a will. It's attested to and sworn to by two witnesses, and then attested to by the same two witnesses. And it's done in the same formula, but it's a lot simpler. And basically, you say, in paragraph 5, where I wanted to give $5,000 to Sal Perillo, I want to change it and give him 10 cents. and
Probably get a lot of that.
Basically, that's it. But a lot of thought goes into the will. I say it's a simple will, but you really need to think about it, and it's important. Same thing with a trust. You can change your will. You can have with a codicil. You can also change the trust, a revocable trust. Basically, you've done it. You got the grantor, grantees, and if things have happened in your life, you got more money, things you want to do that are differently. You can change that up until the time you pass on. The revocable trust. Irrevocable trust, once you do it, it's done. You can't touch it. So that's why you need to be careful on how you do that, thinking about what you're going to do.
Okay. Okay, Diane, going back to this bundling strategy. So you have money that you're not using probably. Let's just say you have whatever, a savings account, or even a qualified account.
Okay.
And so you just take a bunch of it out,
Right, correct.
and then you gift it the year that you may have a lot of medical expenses or things
Right.
like that, which puts you over the standard deduction. Now, for a lot of us in this room, I mean, not anybody at this table, so, when you're over 65,
You get another $1,300 per
so,
person.
so
Could
for
be
a
26.
husband and wife, that's $27,000
Right.
threshold you have to hit.
Right, so it's a large number, and that's why, you know, a lot of people thinking, oh, well, no, but this is a way to do that, and get that big, in a year that you have maybe some other things going on, you know, maybe you're moving homes and you're gonna have a lot of non-cash donation, things like that, and it would be a good idea to bundle all those together at that time.
And also, you said about gifting. Now, if someone, you know, there's in the tax code, you can only give up to 60%
Of your income,
to charity.
right.
So how does your QCD affect that?
Well, that's why the qualified, distribution is outside of that. So that's why the qualified charitable distribution is the best, for me, I would think the first starting point, because you don't have to kind of front load, and it would just reduce your income. So you wouldn't be falling under some of those other limitations.
Okay, and you also mentioned something about the Social Security tax and Medicare.
Right, because as you lower your income, you lower maybe the portion of your Social Security. People, you know, half of your Social Security plus your other income, if it's more than $25,000 if you're single, $32,000 if you're married, becomes taxable up to 85%. It's a you know,
So-
running in circles. So when you lower your other taxable income, you may also be lowering the amount of Social Security that gets taxed.
The amount of Social Security, and the same thing with Medicare. I mean, if you're, you know, they have a tiered system.
Right, the investment income, right, for
Right.
the Medicare
Well, somebody,
tax.
let's say somebody's still working, or they have,
Mhm.
and by doing the QC, they're already given the money.
Right, there's no reason not to do the qualified charitable distribution.
If
It's
you're
just
over
that
70 and a half.
Right, if you're 70 and a half, and it does, and sometimes you have an RMD, maybe an inherited IRA, that does not qualify. Sometimes whether it's a spouse or whether it's a parent, and you're like, oh, well, I have to take an RMD, no, you have to be over 70 and a half. So that's because I think there are more people now who have inherited IRAs who are maybe not that age, and having to take money out, but you do have to be over 70 and a half to do the qualified distribution.
Right, and it also helps on your real estate deductions, on your losses of your real estate,
Mhm.
and the Obama Medicare tax, the 3.8.
Right.
It brings
You're
all this
paying
down.
that. Right, I mean, you know, always reducing your taxable income is a good thing. It's really.
So, anybody that's over 70 and a half that's giving money to charity,
Should do this,
that
absolutely.
has an IRA or some type of
Right,
qualified account.
Right, a qualified account, right.
Would there be
Correct.
any reason not to do this?
I really can't think of one.
Unless they want to pay more tax?
Right, unless you wanna pay more tax, yeah.
Okay. So there's no reason why anyone over 70 and a half should not be doing a QCD.
If you're giving to the church, it's saving you money all around.
Unless you want to pay more tax. You're supposed to say a thing 3 times and people remember it. Okay, now, I had mentioned earlier, we have someone from the Catholic Foundation of North Georgia with us, and I've been talking to her for about quite a while now, and they do some amazing work through the philanthropic wishes of us. And these are the people that take our wishes and turn them into reality. If Juliette, you want to come and do a few things or say a few things? She made personalized brochures for Transfiguration too.
I did. I come with goodies. So,
I'll pass them.
thank you so much. And so I also have something on the turning your IRA rollovers into benefits to you and benefits to the organizations that you care about. Again, thank you so much for having me here. Again, I'm Juliette Greco. I'm with the Catholic Foundation of North Georgia. Who's heard of the Catholic Foundation of North Georgia?
Oh, sorry.
Is there some of you? Well, good. So we are the plan giving partner of the Archdiocese of Atlanta. So we work to support Transfiguration, and all the Catholic schools, the Catholic organizations, Ignatius House, to ensure that they have the financial resources today and in the future, so for the future generations. So all the services that we offer there's no cost. So while we are not professional advisors, we're not attorneys, but we have a lot of resources. We always recommend to speak to your professional advisors. But we can meet with you, and we can talk about what you care about, and maybe come up with different ways for you to leverage all the different assets that you might have to give to what you care about, but to also take care of your family and to maybe navigate the system in the best way possible. So those are some of the things that we do. I encourage you to maybe visit our website. Again, we have, this is the Wills Planning Guide. So what this is just an opportunity for you to sit with your loved ones and kind of really evaluate and look at your assets and just talk through the whole process of creating a will. What you have done there is have collected some really vital information that you can then take to your attorney. You can save some time and money in that whole process of creating a will. But again, so I welcome you, to look at those resources and to call if you have any questions. I mean, this was spot on. Everything that you recommended, in today's day and age with, again, the tax changes and the new laws in place, this was really, really helpful information, again, to take care of your family and also to take care of these organizations and your parish Transfiguration that has been there for you for the good times, the bad, and all in between. Just to carve a little room in your legacy giving to ensure that it's here for the long haul. So, are there any questions?
Sure, I got a lot of questions.
All right.
I gotta kill another hour and a half before we get out of here. Oh, sorry. You heard some of the discussion. So, like I said, one of the things we're known for here is our music,
Right.
which I have no part of. But let's say we want to, I don't know, the artistic musicians and the voices are phenomenal, but they want to leave a legacy for every year they get new hymn books, because a lot of people will be sitting here doing it and taking their own money and doing it. Could we, in our will, leave X amount of dollars to an advisor, a donated advisor fund, and say every year, Transfiguration, I'm not giving Rod any money, but give Rod $1,000 a year for new song books, or something like that?
So there's a couple of ways that you could do that. One way would be to actually create your endowment fund. So to start an endowment fund, again, is investing your gift and to ensure that the purpose that you've created that endowment fund to last forever. It's a legal agreement and it lasts forever. So if you care so much about the ministry of music here at Transfiguration, you can start an endowment fund and it costs $5,000 to start an endowment fund. You might be able to use, liquidate some stock or to utilize certain means to do that. But you can then fulfill it in your will, and a portion of your insurance policy or 401k to then fulfill that endowment fund for Transfiguration for the purpose of the music ministry, and know that every year, forever, Transfiguration for that ministry will continue to receive a distribution from that. There's a gentleman out of St. Thomas, Aquinas, and his wife got sick, and the parish came together and was so generous and wonderful to help take him to visit his wife at Crawford Long. It was quite a ways. Again, they were in Alpharetta and Crawford Long, so what he did was he created an endowment fund to fund a senior minister, an individual to help with the senior ministry there. So when he passed, the endowment fund was fulfilled, and there's now a dedicated individual at that parish to help with senior ministry. And so, again, it's just a beautiful way that you can perpetuate, your giving and your legacy at your parish.
So if we did one of these codicils, whatever that means, that Sal said, we could say, so do we set up the Terry Dunn Foundation, and it goes to a qualified 503C, that would be tax deductible?
The gift, the initial gift, yes, is
Right,
tax
but so
deductible.
the donor fund would actually meet the criteria, because there's some that don't meet the criteria.
Oh, yes. This is, the Catholic Foundation is a 501c3. We're a nonprofit organization. And so, yes, it would qualify as a charitable organization. And again, what we do is we have endowment funds for every single parish in the Archdiocese, and sometimes multiple endowment funds for the parishes in the Archdiocese.
In one of the pieces of literature, I don't know if I have it tonight, it was about I think it's in this one. This story here, about it's just, holy smokes, there's people like this in the world. This one here.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, this Goddix, it's just a poor schmuck like us. Well, no, he's probably a little better off than most of us, but the guys just start feeding coming in on Saturday mornings, feeding the hungry, just something to do with the guys, and they just got involved, and then his passing, he set up this legacy fund. He died a couple years ago, and it's going on every day. Just like you and I, or was it you and me? Pretty good enough. Well, anyway, sister, thank you for getting me for the math. But it's just amazing, the stuff they do.
So one difference between us and like the Community Foundation, so you all know the Community Foundation, all the good work that they do, is our investing is based on Catholic social teachings. So again, all the investing and so this money, this gift is being invested and our returns are pretty good. I know that it's been a volatile year, but on average it's been about 7% is the return on all these investments across for these funds in the Archdiocese of Atlanta. A couple of years ago, 13%. It's a pretty great year, but last year was a little, but we're already doing well this year. So, but again, the funds are invested in Catholic social teachings. So know that your money is helping organizations with the same values of all of you here in this room.
Well, thank you for coming out. I
Thank you
appreciate it.
so much. You guys have a really special parish. So congratulations to all of you. Thank you.
Okay, so are there any questions other than the young man sitting there? Or that man there? Yes, sir.
To what Juliette just talked about, is it the same thing as a charitable gift annuity? And if it's not, how is it different?
Well, charitable gift annuity, which we also do, the charitable gift annuity, again, you would give, you would start the charitable gift annuity, and you would receive income from it, right? Forever, every year. And then once you passed, the remainder would go to your designated, like your parish. So we have many individuals who have that, and the charitable gift annuities, again, are very advantageous over maybe regular annuities. The rates are much higher, and it's pretty attractive. So that's a great avenue as well, and you know that you're getting that income every year, and once you pass, your parish could be the beneficiary of that. So that's one thing. The endowment fund, is that what you're asking, is that the difference?
The endowment fund sounded very similar.
It's,
Yeah.
it's similar, but it is a fund that's created for the purpose that you've designated. It could be actually, there are individuals who start an endowment fund to benefit the parish that can be kind of more broad, you know, just for general operations, and then the pastor and the finance committee, they determine with their, what the annual distributions were, where the needs are. There's a parish in our archdiocese is working real hard to try to get that fund to $200,000 so that every year they have a guaranteed $8,000 to pay for the mortgage every year, and that's their goal. And they're working, you know, little gifts here and there. But again, so this fund will exist forever. It's protected, and that parish will receive the distribution every year.
Right, but then as well, while you're living, you're also getting.
Well, but if you're not actually, but the individual that created the endowment fund is not receiving that annual distribution.
But in charitable gift annuity,
The parishes,
what?
the charitable gift annuity, yes, correct. So there are two. One, charitable gift annuity, you receive the income. The endowment fund, the organization receives the annual distribution from the get-go.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
And just a little point of housekeeping, when you're asked to speak at a panel, do not take the presenter's pen with you when you go sit down.
Oh.
Just a little housekeeping note. I got another one. You must have wanted that.
She gave me hers.
I did it. See, paid it forward, right?
Okay, does that answer your question, Mike? Anybody else? We have a few minutes. Okay. Yes, sir.
So, you had mentioned earlier about whatever you do from standpoint of standard deduction or itemized deduction on the federal return, you have to on the state return.
Correct.
So, could you talk a little bit, introduce those people who don't know about the Grace Scholars, if you know much about that? And what are we finding then the impact of Grace Scholars on that? If people can no longer itemize or no longer itemize, is there still some benefit they can get from doing the Grace Scholar on their state return?
Well, certainly it's a dollar for dollar credit.
Yeah.
And that's
So you lose nothing.
Right, right. So you know, it may not make a difference on your federal return, but on your state return, it's still dollar for dollar, you would get your, you know, essentially get your gift back. So, yeah, so there's no reason to, I mean, maybe it's not as beneficial as it was, but it certainly is still a wonderful way to give.
I guess I find it surprising that I personally don't hear enough people in our Catholic organization here in Archdiocese, because I look at all the pot of money to Archdiocese, they either spend on schools, or they spend on seminaries, or they spend in whatever. This is free completely,
Right.
1,000% free money.
Right.
So I don't know how we get ahead of that train and get more people
Right,
talking about
and it
that.
is something that has to be approved ahead of time by the state, because there's only so much money that the state will allot for that. So it just takes a little bit. You usually apply in like December for the next year. I think it's on the Georgia Department of Revenue website that you would log on and you apply.
Well, and Grace Scholars actually gotten that done so well now, they do it all for you.
Oh, okay.
You go online with, and they apply this year, January first.
It was in October, I
done.
did mine.
Okay.
I sent it in October.
Yeah.
Yeah, so and then they file with the state on
Bam.
January the first, and this year every, and
everybody got
Archdiocese got
their-
100% of the money.
Yeah,
Yeah, that's
yeah.
great.
Yeah, because last year it was only,
Right.
it was
Yep.
only $574 last year for
Okay.
$1,000, but this year I got the full thing.
Yeah,
So-
yep.
But you do have to do it early because it
Right.
does.
Yes.
Fill up.
It fills up.
I know, you gotta do it
and then-
fast.
That's right.
Yeah,
Or it fills up.
it's really
And
has
what's
a
the
big
max
impact.
one?
It's
2,500.
Yeah, the max is $2,500.
Yes.
And going back to something Diane said, when you do your taxes, if you're retired and you're you and your spouse are both over 65, you have a $27,000 standard deduction. And that's a hard nut to crack. But let's say most of your income is not excluded from your state tax. Let's say you have other stuff other than Social Security and over $64,000 in IRA. You may want, let's say your deductions are only $25,000 on your federal. You may want to take that and apply that $25,000 towards your state instead of taking the $3,000 or whatever the standard deduction
Right,
is for the
6,000.
state. Whatever it is, yeah.
Yeah.
So, you know, don't try this at home because it may cause boredom, sleepiness, do not operate machinery after doing your taxes. Yes, sir.
Okay, I, actually two separate questions. So with regard to the state tax system,
Mhm.
once the federal tax laws were overhauled in December a year ago, and we have this big standard deduction.
Right, it's,
Okay, so if we had been itemizing and we're not anymore because we didn't hit that 24,000 or 27,000 for 65 and over, okay, then, you know, you take the standard for federal, then you have to take the standard for state. Did the state adjust anything?
they actually doubled the prior standard deduction was 3,000, so they
Uh-huh.
doubled it to 6. But
Okay.
it's still a huge gap to the 24 for that's on federal.
Okay, so is it likely that, you know,
I-
people could end up paying more in state taxes, even though they're paying perhaps less in federal?
Yes.
Starting in 2019, I mean, for 2018 taxes, right?
Right.
Okay,
Yeah, that is happening. You know, a lot of people, because everybody looks at kind of like, well, what's my refund? And as long as they're getting something, they're happy. But but people are paying more in state taxes. And that's why it's important to check both ways. And basically, you know, if your standard deduction is 24, if you're in that level, you know, if you're at 22-ish with your itemized deductions, that's probably about where it may be better to itemize. And it also depends on what your other income is and what your federal bracket is.
Okay,
So that's why it's.
all right, thank you for answering that. And the other question is, about the donor advised funds. I mean, you were talking about the, you know, qualified charitable distribution 70 and a half, but the
Right.
donor advised funds.
That's
for any
anybody,
age,
right.
Anybody can do this.
Mhm.
Okay, so, again, could you be a little more specific about that? The donor advised funds?
Well,
Could you
it's
explain
really
little
a
more?
case of, you know, I mean, it would be great if you could give $25,000 or $30,000 every year, but if you think over a period of time that you could do that, you know, this is what I'm gonna give, but take the itemized deductions in 1 year, along with your other, you know, type of, you know, your state taxes and things like that. And it's really a case of, you know, if you want to just say, here's church, here's $30,000, don't send me a bill, don't come knocking for another couple of years, or you can give it to donor advised funds run by a financial institution, and then they would kind of hand out the money each year according to your wishes. So, but at any age you could do that. And also just, you know, anybody who maybe has a small business, has an owner business, you know, maybe, you know, something advertising wise, you know, and something of the church, like a mission trip or something like that, or a run or golf tournament, things like that, that maybe you were, well, I'm just donating to the church, and that's fine, but now if those donations really aren't adding up, if you have a small business, you can maybe start doing advertising. You do have to supposed to get some type of advertising value out of that, you know, and a mention in a brochure or something like that. But for anybody who has a small business or something like that, that you can kind of control that money, that is certainly a way to, you know, to benefit the same the same organizations, whether it's an American Heart Association or a mission trip or something like that. You can still kind of help in that way. You just have to have an advertising edge to that.
Okay, with the clock on the wall, underneath the clock on the wall. Yes, sir.
I just wanted to comment on the will. We've had ours done by an attorney, but one of the things, if you anticipate a issue with the distribution of your will, our attorney recommended that we got 2 kids and we don't anticipate problems, but we put in our will that if they dispute the will, that it goes to Transfiguration.
Handcuffs from the grave. Handcuffs from the grave.
I got a bunch of kids.
Yes, you do.
That'll stop them.
Okay, so this evening, we've gone over quite a few things. Hopefully, most of it will sink in. We went over the benefits of gifting or giving, the tax benefits or the tax opportunities that we have through our panel here, the estate ways of more effectively and cost-effectively transferring stuff to charity and our children, and the mechanics, how you change your beneficiaries or send a letter to get your QCD put in your files, so if you're ever audited, you could prove that you did it. And Juliette talked about leaving a legacy. You know, it's not what you take, it's what you leave. And everybody has their own idea of what that means. So I'd like to thank the panel for coming out on this rainy night. I'd like to thank Carla and Bev and Owen and Victor and Jose and Marita and everybody else who's here, the staff here at Transfiguration who are fantastic. And of course, I'd like to thank Juliette for coming out and sharing legacy planning with us. And this presentation will be up on YouTube sometime. And so hopefully we've given you some helpful tips or ideas how to better build a legacy now and for the future. We've given you some tools. Now go make a difference. Good night.